Hi everyone, I'm here today to do some tarot deck reviews. I thought maybe I would start doing some reviews of some of the decks that are in my collection, and with it being October and the time of year when the veil is starting to thin, I tend to bring out my darker decks this time of year. So I thought I'd do some reviews of some of my darker decks that I'm going to be using through October and November. Because this is a time of year when we think of our dead and think of the past ones that have gone before us. This is, like I said, when the veil is thinning. We tend to honor our dead this time of year. In October and November, we pray for the souls of the dead, and we're a little bit more open and in tune to any messages perhaps that they want to send us at this time of year. So like I said, I thought I'd do some reviews of some of my darker decks because that's sort of the theme. And not all of them are dark in a bad way. Like, dark isn't always a bad thing. People tend to associate dark with bad or evil. And I disagree, because this is the crone time of the year. This is when the year starts to get darker itself too. And it's a resting time, not a bad time. So sometimes, like they say, if you sleep in the dark, it's better if it's all dark because you get a better night's sleep, that sort of thing. So dark is a restful time. It's a time of rejuvenation. It's a time of healing, because in a past life, I used to own a spa. I say past life, but it was like a while ago. And I would always talk to clients about, if they had bad skin, how much sleep are you getting? Because healing is a nocturnal thing. We don't heal when we're awake, we heal when we're asleep. So if you have bad skin, you need more sleep a lot of the times, or more water too. But anyways, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about decks. So the first deck I'm going to be looking at is the Russian Tarot of St. Petersburg. It's got a gilded, beautiful box, and you can see that there's a black background. So there's a lot of darkness to this deck. I do love this deck. I love all things Russian. I sometimes jokingly say I was Russian in a past life, and that's why I'm attracted to those things. So this is a nice deck to shuffle as well. It's a good size, that sort of thing. The cards aren't flimsy, so they shuffle nicely, but they're not too thick either, because some decks get really thick. And that's the back of the deck there. Now, just to give you some examples of what the cards look like, here's the 8 of coins. So I wouldn't say this is necessarily a beginner deck, because there's not always the same symbology that is in the Rider-Waite-Smith. I mean, there is some, obviously, with the strength. There's that lion there that's almost on every strength card ever made. There's the sun. But what I find with this deck is it makes you pay attention. So it is good to know what each card kind of means going into this. This would not be what I would say is a beginner deck. There's the 10 of clubs. So they've changed, like, clubs is one of the alternatives for wands. So that's what this is a wand, as you may have learned already. So 6 of clubs there. So I find that this deck is a slow-moving deck. There's not a lot of fast action. Not that there's moving tarot decks, but I just find with this one, there's more, purposeful kind of, if there's movement at all, it's very purposeful, it's very heavy. This is what I would say is a heavy deck. It makes you pay attention to the pictures and really look at them, and then you also have to pay attention to the energy of the card, because the picture's not always going to give up the information that you're after, kind of thing. Also, the pictures are small because there's big heavy borders you can see on each card. The pentacles are coins in this deck. There's the death card, which is actually not a bad looking card considering it's the death card. That's always the one Hollywood uses, right? The death card. So this is a bit of a heavier deck, very Russian, like Russian. So like I said, it's got a heaviness to it, but it's a nice deck to read. I do like it. There's like the 3 of Cups there. So they've got 3 women together, which is lovely. They've got huge bejeweled cups there. But most of the time in most tarot decks, you're seeing some kind of party or they're dancing around. There's obvious movement. There's not obvious movement here. Yeah, they're getting together. Yeah, they're going to have a good time. But it's not as, you know, flighty as in some decks. So even their joyful cards have a bit of a heaviness to them. But I do love this deck. I really enjoy this deck. I like just looking at the pictures. Sometimes I pull it out for readings, and this is the deck that I kind of use during this time of year as well. Now the next deck that I'm going to go into is called the Dark Grimoire Tarot, and this actually was one of my first working decks, as I call it, because I'm Lady Rose of Goddess Garage Tarot Parlor, and I am a master professional tarot reader, and I have been a professional tarot reader for a little over 10 years. I've dabbled in tarot for many years before then, but I've become a professional a little over 10 years ago now. So this was one of my first working decks, and I really like this deck. Now this deck scares some people sometimes. There's the cover of the cards, because this deck contains monsters. This deck contains a lot of ghostly, eerie kind of images. This deck also contains many tortured souls in it. And on first look, it can be a little frightening, to say the least. Some people have been like, oh my God, what are you doing with this deck? And why are you showing me these cards? These look horrific. So some of these cards can be a little bit jaunting in their, and shocking in the way they approach and look at first. But there's two elements in this deck that I really love. So this is the Ace of Chalices, so I'll talk about the first element here. All the aces have books. They all are books. So that's one of the things. There's books throughout this deck, and that's part of the reason I fell in love. Almost every card has a book somewhere. It's just a matter of finding it. And like I said, some of these tortured souls, right? So I'm a book lover. If you know me at all, you know I love to read. There's a graveyard. I also love graveyards. So there's some grave scenes in this deck. And it looks a little depressing at first, but I'll talk about the second element. So the books I love. And this deck is about lessons, about higher learning, connecting with your higher self, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of that, a lot of ritual that happens in this deck. The other thing that happens in this deck is there's a lot of light. In every single card, there's light somewhere. You just have to look for it. And what I love about this deck is because it's so dark, it can actually show you the light, but it makes you look for the light. And the other thing that this deck does too, because it is dark and because it does have that light to it, that it shows you no matter, so this is the one where, you know, we're always moving forward. We're trying to get to that place of higher learning that's bathed in the light that's coming down. So what I find with this deck is it shows you no situation, no matter how haunting it might be, is hopeless. Oh, here's one of the few colors. So that's Judgment. There's rainbows in that one. So yeah, so there's no hopelessness. There's always hope, no matter how dire or tortured the situation becomes. There's a bunch of monsters there. They can't touch the light though, right? Yeah. So I love this deck. Like I said, I worked with this deck for a number of years. There's some ritual, there's light, there's books. I love it. Love it all. It's like Nero playing his violin there. But there's never, even though it might feel hopeless, because this person looks hopeless, but this person is showing the promise of a new way of doing something, or a new way of traveling, or moving forward in some way, kind of thing. So there's a lot of light in this deck. and I really love it for that reason. And like I said, I worked with it for a number of years. Now I pull it out, you know, usually this time of year, and every once in a while when I'm in the mood for it. If a client comes in with a really dark kind of intention or inquiry or question or whatever, I might pull out one of my darker decks at other times of the year too. I like to have one handy at least, just in case. So this next deck I'm going to talk about is done by an artist called Victoria Francis. So you might be familiar with her art. She's kind of like Anne Stokes with an edge. I love her art. Again, it's very dark art. She does a lot of vampires and witches. She does angels too, but in a darker kind of way. And she's a gothic kind of artist. She's a Spanish artist, and she does a lot of really kind of gothic art. So this deck is definitely an advanced deck. I would not recommend this for beginners. I might not even recommend this for intermediates. So there's a couple of reasons why I wouldn't recommend this one, and I'm not going to be shuffling this one because I only use parts of this deck because this is a deck that I've had to work with for a few years to finally make a connection with. Sometimes you have to work with a deck for a very long time, and then suddenly it like clink, it locks in, and you're like, okay, now I'm getting this deck, or I know how I'm going to be working with this deck. So a lot of times I'll do like double, triple, quadruple deck readings because certain decks bring different energies. So this is one of those decks that I would bring in as the double, triple, or quadruple deck kind of thing, because I tend to only use the major arcana and sometimes the court cards and the aces in this deck. I very rarely actually use the whole deck. I have, but I don't do it very often. This is a harder deck to read, partly because it follows the Rider-Waite Smith formula as far as it's got 4 suits, it's got the major and minor arcana, that sort of thing. But all the art, or most of the art that I know that's in here, had already been produced. It wasn't produced for this deck. Now I know she has other decks too. I've got some of her books, I've got some of her calendars, that sort of thing. But a lot of this art was produced before this deck came along, and it was kind of taken and put into this deck. So sometimes some of the art doesn't quite fit what you would think of for the Judgment card, or for the, you know, the Fool card, or whatever kind of thing. These are just examples. These aren't necessarily ones that don't fit. But the other reason this deck is hard to read is because I'm going to get these suits out here for you, because she created her own suits, which in of itself is fine. So we've got masks is one suit, butterflies is the other suit, we've got the black roses or the flowers as the third suit, or whatever number you want to put it to, and then we've got crosses. So that's great, that's awesome. She's got 4 suits, all beautifully done, as you can see. But if you get a reading from me and I say, let's say the crosses are pentacles and the roses are cups and the butterflies are, you know, swords, and so that leaves wands for the masks. You might go to another reader and they've said the butterflies are pentacles and the roses are the wands, and that sort of thing, right? So what she's done is she's like said, okay, I've got 4 suits here. Now you make it up as to what is assigned to what. So, you know, normally in the Rider-Waite Smith or in any tarot system, the 4 suits are cups, wands, pentacles, and what did I not say? Cups, wands, anyways, swords. That's what I didn't say. So cups, wands, swords, and pentacles. So we know those 4 suits, right? But these ones you can assign to whatever, and it won't be the same necessarily for every reader. Every reader can make up whatever they want. So that makes it a little more difficult. It makes it difficult for a client too, because they don't always get consistency then. Because if I've said the crosses are wands and another reader said, well, the crosses are swords, then it's hard to know, okay, which one are we going with? So that makes it a little bit harder. Now, you know, okay, so we can assign suits to whatever. We can say the crosses are or wands, let's say. So we've assigned our suits. However, the major or the minor arcana in this deck are what it's called, this deck is called a pip deck. So there are no pictures for any of the suits. They're all what's called pips. So the butterfly, 5 of butterflies is just 5 butterflies on the card. So this way you kind of have to know your tarot really well. And I've read it this way, which is fine. I don't mind, like this is the 3 of Wands, so I know what the 3 of Wands means because I can reference back to my Rider-Waite Smith deck, sorry. And when I teach tarot, because I teach tarot classes as well, I do always insist on a student, if they're going to be bringing their first deck, it needs to be a Rider-Waite Smith deck. One, because it's consistent through the whole class and we're not having to get confused with other decks at first. And also two, any book that you read about tarot is going to reference the Rider-Waite Smith deck. That's sort of the deck of tarot. That's what all the other decks are based off of. So it's good to know what the meanings are. It's great to read intuitively or empathically, and that's all wonderful, but it's also good to know, to have a good foundation and know what this card means, you know, by the traditional sense, so that you have something to sort of fall back onto, and so that you can draw intuition from what the energy of this card is. It's been known as this sort of thing for many, many decades, you know, now for a long, long time, and even probably hundreds of years maybe. But anyways, it's got that energy because of the repetition of it. But the thing is, like, then again, there's different suits, right? So it's whatever you assign them. So I've been known to use this deck, especially when I was first using it. And, you know, I'll say, you know, butterflies are pentacles. And then halfway through, I'm saying they're swords. And I've done that right in reading. So it can get a little confusing. So this is a deck that you need to work with a few times before you bring it out into the public, as I say. And I do tend to use it as my second, third, or fourth deck on a reading if I want the energy of it. And I do tend to bring the Major Arcana out only on this deck. And the artwork is beautiful. Now these are the court cards. So these are the court cards. There's the Knave of Flowers, or no, that's the Knight of Flowers. And there's the Queen of Flowers. If you're familiar with Victoria Francis's art, you'll recognize some of these images. Like I said, she's very gothic, there's Masquerade there, there's the Fool, there's Beautiful Death. She even makes death look beautiful. She makes everything look beautiful. I love, love, love her artwork. It's very dark, which I also love. If you have some of her books, I know I do, there's even a fairy tale element or a love story element to a lot of her art as well. She tells it as a story with art. Even the devil's a little bit charming in this one. So her art tells a story in of itself. So I'm lucky enough that I'm able to reference back to even some of her books and know, oh, this came from this book and this is kind of the story behind this picture, that sort of thing. So it's a beautiful deck just to have, even just to look at the beautiful pictures of it all. But it is a harder deck to connect with and a harder deck to kind of read because of the pip thing and because of the different suits. It's totally up to you what you make each of the suits. But and a lot of these Major Arcana cards, like I said, is artwork that she had already produced, and they've just been kind of fill in the blank. We're going to use this one for this card, and like this one for the Wheel of Fortune, that sort of thing. There's the Hermit. There's more of a winter theme happening. But a lot of these I've already seen. There's the sun. The sun's not very sunny. But again, she's dark, so what can you expect? A lot of this artwork I've already seen in other places. And I'm just happy to have this deck to be able to have it in my collection. So I do love this deck, but it is not one for the faint of heart, and it is not one for a beginner at all, because this will completely confuse you if you start trying to use this deck as a regular deck. Even I don't use it as a regular deck very often. It's a rare thing for me to use it. I do tend to stick to the major arcana cards just because the artwork's so beautiful. Now this other deck, I've got it in this silk bag. I keep a lot of the decks that I use fairly often in silk bags. So I've forgotten the box because I'm actually in my tarot parlor right now. I'm not at home, and some of my boxes are at home. Some of them are here. So this was made by a friend of mine, a silk bag with a Day of the Dead sugar skull on it, because I love skulls. I love Day of the Dead stuff. I love sugar skulls. I love dark. I love it all. So this is a really nice deck. I love it. I can't remember the name of it. I will put it in the comments below once I get the video up and going. So you can look for it there. You can get it, this one, on Amazon. That's where I ordered it. This one was off of Amazon. And a lot of times when I'm doing my tarot parties, this is a favorite one to be picked, and a lot of people end up buying the deck. So it's all about skulls. That's the cover right there of the deck. So that's the cover of the cards, anyways, the back of the cards. So even the back of the cards are colorful, and it's all, like I said, all about skulls and death. So it's a very heavy subject, but it's a very light deck in the sense that it doesn't take itself too seriously. It does take the subject of death seriously, but in a lighthearted way and in a colorful way, in a celebratory way, actually. It's celebrating it a lot of the times. All the aces, no, not aces, all the all the tens are butterflies, which I think are very interesting that they did that, because tens, of course, are the last number of any of the minor arcana suits. And tens are that transformation number, right? You're at the end, you're done, kind of thing. So it's a true transformation. All the tens are different colored butterflies, and that's what death is. It's all about transition, right? It's just they're treating death like it's another stage of life, which essentially it probably is. This is not a deck for the beginner, because again, you might get confused. Not all the symbology is necessarily there, but it's a beautiful deck to work with. It is also hard to read because the numbers are teeny tiny over here. So when I do my tarot parties, when I do group tarot parties at the parlor, people get to pick out the deck that they want to use, and a lot of people go for this deck. And I find that people find it hard to read because I'll say, what do you have there? And they can't find the number on the side. So it's not as obvious about what it is. Even the Hermit, it's like just written small. A lot of them are like big borders, the Hermit kind of thing. So there's the Hermit in his coffin. We've got the Two of Cups. Two of Cups is all about connection, and they're connecting, one flowing into the other kind of thing. So I really like this deck because even though it's touching on a dark subject and it is all about death and whatnot, it's very light and, like I said, almost celebratory in its attitude towards it. There's a little tongue-in-cheek in some of the cards, which I really appreciate. The artwork is amazing and so colorful. I really like it. There's the World, for instance. Temperance. Temperance is always beautiful. There's the Justice card, and it's kind of funny that the Grim Reaper's on the Justice card, not on the Death card. There's the Ten of Swords, another butterfly. So I really want to give you a feel of what the card is about, or what the decks are about. This is the Three of Wands. So it's not always like very obvious what the suit is, because there's not like obviousness. It's not like, oh, they're all like this. So you really have to pay attention to what the card is, read it, and then know, okay, this is, this card. There's Judgment there. This is the Eight of Cups. So there are cups. There's skull cups in the cups thing. This is Swords. Some people get freaked out by this one because it kind of looks like Pinhead or something. Then we've got the King of Cups here. This is the Six of Cups, so we're on a ship. And there's a treasure chest full of skull cups. We've got the Magician. So he's a true sugar skull, and he's got all the tools out on his table there for us. The Page of Cups here. Who do we have? Six of Swords. As we know, it's a boat and it's moving forward, and he's got all his skull swords there. He's actually got swords in skeletons that he's moving forward with. Here's the Devil card. So it's got darkness, but it's still light, right? Like it's not a dark kind of card. So there's Seven of Swords. It says hope and reflection on his coffin there. So I really like that. Like I said, even though it's about death, there's a lot of color. There's a lot of hope and celebration about it. Like I said, it's another transition. It's all about transitioning. There's a little bit of religion in it too, as there is in any tarot, even the Rider-Waite-Smith. There's a lot more religion and Christianity than people realize in tarot. Like I did in my earlier video, when I talked about the angels of tarot. Yes, there are angels in tarot, right on the tarot cards. That's a nice card. What's that? Oh, that's the High Priestess. Of course I like that one. I'm High Priestess Lady Rose. So Three of Cups there. It's a beautiful card. Oh, there's a lot of, if you're into skulls, the Five of Pentacles is for you. There it is. Lots of skulls there. But it goes on and on like that. I could show you the whole deck, but I think I gave you a good sample there. Like I said, I use this deck a fair amount. I love this deck, and I use it a lot at parties because it does have a bit of a jovialness to it, even though we're talking about a serious subject. Now, the last deck that I have to show you is one that I got when I was in Prague last Christmas. And Prague is considered the fairy tale capital of the world. Beautiful. It's got cobblestone streets, and much of its architecture is like medieval and Gothic. And this deck is very Gothic as well. This deck you cannot get on Amazon as far as I know. I had to hunt this deck down. The company that made it is Baba Studio. So it's the Bohemian Gothic Tarot. So again, this is another dark deck, very Gothic. They were originally based out of Prague, I believe, but they're now based in Ireland. And they are actually coming out with an Alice in Wonderland deck too, if you're into that sort of thing. So this is the Bohemian Gothic Tarot. I got this one because I wanted something to be tarot related, that reminded me of Prague, because I loved my trip to Prague. So every card on here just about has some kind of landmark from Prague or surrounding area. Now I'm going to show you some of the cards in here, but first I wanted to talk about the Bone Church, which is in Kutna Hora, which is a little village that's just outside of Prague. And you can go and see this famous Bone Church, it's called, as sort of the, that's not what it really is named, but that's what the tourists call it. So if you type in Bone Church into Google or YouTube or whatever, you're going to come up with all kinds of tours and pictures, so you'll be able to see what I saw. I was able to tour this church, and there's quite a story behind it. So it was around in the medieval times. It had a monastery right next door to it, and a graveyard where, you know, the local dead were buried. And one of the monks went to the Holy Land and brought back a pouch of dirt from the Holy Land, which was considered sacred. So what he did was he sprinkled this dirt into the graveyard to, you know, now it's sort of, you know, made the place more holy. The souls were blessed. It was sort of, you know, now you're guaranteed to get into heaven if you're buried in this graveyard. So word got out that this monk had done this, and then many of the wealthy people of the area and surrounding area and outside the surrounding area even wanted to be buried there because they knew it was a very holy land. So it got so popular that they actually, the monks had to exhume some of the old bones in order to put the new bones in. This is how crowded this graveyard was getting. So there was one monk in particular that was kind of in charge of this, and he did much of the exhuming himself, and he just started piling the bones in the church because he ran out of space of where to put these bones, because of course they're still, you know, considered souls of the dead, and you know, you don't just toss them into the next field or anything. So he was piling them into the church, and it got so crowded that, you know, you couldn't get into the church. So then they hired this carpenter who was going to organize the bones, and what he ended up doing was making beautiful works of art. So when you Google it, you're going to, or YouTube it, you're going to see like chandeliers that were made of bones, and these were real human remains that he made them with. And I was in this church. Now there's now a modern day church over top of it, so they don't actually use this church for mass or anything anymore. But I was in this church where they used to do mass, and it is full of bones, and there are pyramids of skulls, and they now have architects in there because the pyramids have started to shift a little and they're in danger of falling over. So they didn't do a very good job in the medieval times of cataloging or organizing the bones so that they knew how many people they have in there. They estimate there's about 40,000 souls in there. But what the architects are doing right now is they're disassembling all those pyramids in order to catalog and record all the bones, and then they're going to reassemble them so that they're more steady. And they're actually going to hopefully get a good accurate count as to how many souls are in the church. But like I said, this carpenter organized these bones into pyramids, into works of art. There's bones all over the walls. I'm going to show you some of the things. One of the things I bought at a gift shop, a souvenir from Kutnahora. See, it says Kutnahora. And this is, you can see, skulls here. These are bones here. These aren't, this is just a replica, obviously. But there's, I believe, 2 or 3 of these kind of plant holders. I don't know what to call them. There's no plants in them in the church, but that are actually in the church. I saw the real things in the church. And a lot of people were like, were you not creeped out while you were in the church with all these bones? And actually, no, I wasn't. It was actually very peaceful and very quiet in there. And it was amazing to just see all these bones all over the place. But like I said, this deck, there's the back of it, nothing fancy. They're nice cards, good thick cards, good quality art. It is Gothic art, definitely. So it's kind of, and it's dark, but there is some color to it. You'll see that as we continue along. This is a little bit of an example of what some of the architecture looks like. So this is definitely something you would see in the Bone Church. I remember seeing that actual piece there. So this is the sort of thing that you would see in the Bone Church. So there's examples of both architecture in Prague. So this is, I recognize this as one of the alleyways that you could go down. And when we went down there, it was very dark, but it's just getting you from one street to the other. But in that darkness, in one of the corners, was a guy that was a street musician that was playing the cello as his instrument of choice. And it was really cool to hear him playing this cello in the dark, and you know, had his hat out for money. So there's the Ace of Cups, just like I showed you that cup there. And that's what you see in the church. That's exactly what I saw. And there's lots of examples of, that's not one. Let me just find an example of some stuff in Prague. Oh, there's the Fool. I like the Fool. It's a nice dark card with the full moon and that sort of thing. There's Strength. So there's Strength there with the lion, of course. Oh, here we go. So this is the Knight of Cups. That's the one of the archways at St. Charles Bridge. I was on that bridge. It's a beautiful, beautiful bridge. This is the Four of Wands. That's one of the many buildings that you'll see there. The Three of Pentacles. They even have a few monsters in this card, or in this deck, I mean. And there is some color to it, which I like. So there's the Wheel of Fortune, and she's getting her fortune read, of all things, in one of the castle rooms. There's the Jewish quarter too. So I didn't quite get all the way over there. That's the courtyard of one of the castle areas, like one of the grounds of the castles, that you can go see. Nine of Pentacles, just to give you an idea. It's kind of got a creepy feel to it, the artwork, but I really like it. Like I said, it's very gothic. There's the World. It's a beautiful deck to look at. Good sized pictures. I like that this one doesn't have borders. Sometimes I like borders. I have nothing against borders, but it wouldn't really work. So there's another example of the Bone Church there. This is the Ace of Wands. Let me see, what else do we got? Oh, there's the Hanged Man. This is definitely something you would see in the Bone Church. See, there's little sort of almost decoration of skulls there, and then there's work there and work down here, and that's typical of what you would see in the Bone Church for sure. They really like the Bone Church in this deck, but they do have some Prague pictures as well. So there's one of the pictures with some Prague stuff in the background there. Where's the other? There's some other ones there too that I saw earlier. There's the Queen of Wands. Oh, this is a creepy one. Seven of Wands. He doesn't look very like he's doing anything nice. The Empress always makes me laugh because she's just kind of goofy looking to me. And the kids are kind of like goofy and creepy all at the same time. But I like it. This kind of has a Hansel and Gretel kind of feel. That's the castle, by the way, in the background. You see that almost everywhere you're in the city of Prague. You always see the castle kind of in the background. This is another shot of St. Charles Bridge with the Six of Wands. That's right in Prague. And we've got the Nine of Cups here. Very Edgar Allan Poe feel to it. Let me see what else. We've got the Lovers here. This is one version. They actually give you two versions of the Lovers in this deck. So you can take this one, or there's a vampire version as well. Let me see what else we got here. The High Priestess. She's very colorful there. Lots of color, like very rich color, jewel tone colors when there is color in this deck, I find. The King of Cups has got a little bit of a skeleton, or not skeleton, a vampire thing happening there. Kind of reminds me of one of those older movie vampire kind of things. Let me see, what else do we have? This is inside the castle. The King of Wands, of course it would be inside the castle with it being a king. Oh, this is typical. We saw a lot of this on the walls at the Bone Church too. This is the Seven of Pentacles. So that's, yeah, he did a lot of that on the walls. So there was a lot of that. Oh, this is, I know exactly where this store is. So I've seen this store. I've been in this store in Prague. It's in downtown Prague. So it was kind of cool to be able to see that. The architecture in Prague is just amazing. I'm just looking for a particular card because I want to show you an example of one of the things. Oh, here's the Queen of Pentacles. Again, I love the royal cards in this. I find the court cards are really easy to read in this deck because they're not just a queen sitting on her throne or a king sitting on his throne. There's actually, you know, unlike the Russian one, I said that where there wasn't a lot of action, there's action happening. There's elements and layers to the court cards in this particular deck. So I enjoy that. No, I can't find the one I was looking for. Nah, maybe it'll come up. Well, there's another piles of bones, right? There were literally piles of bones in the Bone Church. So that's the Emperor. Now I know where this is. They've made it look very gothic there, but I know exactly what street that is. I've been on that street. I walked that street in Prague. So it's kind of neat to be able to see this card and go, hey, I've been there. Oh, this is the card I was actually looking for. So when I was in Prague, I was taking pictures, of course. And when I do those kind of things, I like to give a lot of history behind, you know, why we're here, what's being built, blah, blah, blah. And I went into this weird series of taking pictures of doors, because there were so many doors in Prague, and they were very interesting. And this is just an example. There were a lot of doors very much like this. I was like, I cannot believe the doors, like the artwork, the ornateness of them. We just don't make doors like that anymore. But so I've seen this door when I was in Prague, so it's kind of neat, and it's a very neat deck. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, oh, and there's another picture of one of the castles that's around. So I mean, we toured churches and all that kind of stuff. So I really love this deck because, of course, it reminds me of my trip to Prague. But it is a very cool deck, even if you're, you know, just into Gothic, you love architecture, you like bones, that sort of thing. This is a really cool deck to have and to work with. Like I said, it's not available on Amazon. It is Baba Studio, B-A-B-A Studio. I'll put the name in the description once I've got this uploaded and everything. And like I said, this company is now based out of Ireland, and I believe they're coming out with Alice in Wonderland, deck, if they haven't already. So those are some of my darker decks that I'm using for October and November, in the darker months of the year. And I went through all of them, I think, so that's good. So I'm hoping to do some more tarot reviews. But if you have any tarot questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. Please subscribe to my channel. Please like this video if you liked it. If you want to see more tarot deck readings or tarot deck reviews, I mean, you can find me at Goddess Garage Tarot Parlor. I'll put some links below because I am on Instagram as well. I'm not as good at posting, but I am there. I'm at Lady Rose Tarot on Instagram, and I'll put my email address there if you want to book any tarot readings with me. I do them both online and in person in my little tarot parlor. So I hope that you enjoyed that video and enjoyed seeing some of these other decks, and I hope to do it again. All right, take care. Bye.